A pandemic, a deficit, and a devastating storm. Lawmakers started the session facing a series of crises. Now their decisions are becoming laws. How the results could affect your money and your health and safety. Protests after George Floyd's murder brought vows from state leaders and lawmakers to take action toward criminal justice reform. The results have been mixed. We look at what passed, what failed, and what happens next. Plus, being independent from ERCOT helped one Texas city keep the lights on during the winter storm. But now they're joining ERCOT's grid. Will the system be ready to handle the load?
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. This week we're taking a closer look at the decisions made at the Capitol and the impact on you. We hosted Capitol Closeout, a live discussion with our team of reporters answering questions you sent to us. First topic, the state budget. Lawmakers fulfilled their commitment to public education, but will likely see funding gaps in other areas. Wes Rappaport walks us through some of the winners and losers this session.
Yeah, Josh, well, one of the key pieces of this budget was that commitment to public education. And in my conversations with some of the budget writers, they really wanted to make sure that they were able to keep their promises that they made during the previous legislative session as it related to property tax reform and school finance reform. And so one of the key pieces of that was keeping the funding levels that they had committed to before and supplementing that this time around. Also, some of the winners in this legislative session, the troopers with the Texas Department of Public Safety are expected to see pay raises after lawmakers are all done here. We are also seeing investment again in the Healthy Texas Women program. I believe that's about a $10 million increase there, and also seeing $30 billion for transportation updates. As far as some of the areas or entities that may not see as fruitful financial situations after this budget, the pandemic-related cuts relating to higher education. So far, it looks like higher ed was not necessarily a winner in this budget. Budget writers, tried to make up for some pandemic-related cuts that were incurred earlier in the year and part of last year as well during this pandemic, but they just didn't fill the gap all the way. One other point I wanted to make as well is lawmakers have talked a lot about border security funding. Especially, it's a hot button issue, and it is important for a lot of Texans because of our stretch of border with Mexico. The state in this budget re-upped its commitment to border security funding, so I wanted to point that out as well.
All right, we'll have more from our Capitol Closeout discussion just ahead, and you can watch the whole discussion online now. We've linked the full event to this story in the Texas Politics section of your station's website. Texas will soon become the largest state to allow carrying firearms without a permit. The Senate sent the legislation to the governor's desk. Politics reporter John Engel shares reaction.
I was at church on August 3rd.
El Paso Representative Joe Moody remembers the call. A gunman had opened fire at a Walmart in town, killing 23 people. Moody joined Governor Greg Abbott in speaking with the families of victims soon after.
When the doors were closed, I heard lots of promises. I haven't heard them since.
Momentum behind gun reform that emerged from that 2019 shooting now meets the political reality in Texas.
The Republicans are in a position where they don't have to make compromises.
The state legislature is instead moving forward with fewer restrictions in an effort to make Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
Even on a big issue and an emotional issue like gun control, it might not be the case that they're willing to budge because they've got a base that they have to placate.
And in a rare move, Texas's permitless carry legislation could retroactively apply to more than 130,000 criminal cases since 1974. Those with a felony conviction for unlawful carry could get their case expunged and be able to own a gun again.
Some more procedures are going to be needed. Those are going to depend on where the person's located, what the state of the records are, and what else is going on in that person's case besides this one particular conviction.
It's a fight Moody didn't expect to win, but a moment he couldn't pass up.
The tragedy will come to your community. It's come to many others' community, and it's going to come to yours too, because we fail to be responsible to the members of our communities across this state.
For State of Texas, I'm John Engel.
Several viewers sent us questions about the permitless carry legislation. Laura Denham asked, what is the thinking behind passing a gun law that allows anyone to carry a weapon without training? Our John Engel has been tracking the legislation and shared his insight.
It's a fair question, but it's one that's difficult to answer because it gets down to some philosophical differences between the two sides in this argument. But the conservative talking point, at least, has been that we need to have more good guys with guns and the availability for people who should legally be allowed to carry guns. And the law enforcement groups that opposed this legislation pretty much throughout the way were able to, in the 11th hour, get some provisions in there about police officers being able to secure someone's firearm if there's a public safety issue or if they have concerns about that interaction. And while those law enforcement groups are still concerned about permitless carry in Texas, it will soon be the law here. Governor Greg Abbott signaled that he would sign that bill. And again, the thinking is anyone who is that quote-unquote good guy should be able to carry a gun.
Last summer's protests after the murder of George Floyd fueled new calls for criminal justice reform. But a lot of those plans failed to advance. What went wrong and what's next? Heading into the session, Democrats had high hopes for Medicaid expansion. We'll look closer at what kept those plans from crossing the finish line. One Texas city is making a big move this week to get power from the ERCOT grid. How the failure during the winter storm is raising questions statewide about the change.